So, Bradwin, thank you very much for making time and coming back to the Future
Of
of
course.
Leadership interview.
Uh-huh.
The last time we spoke was in June 2020. So,
Wow.
a lot has happened, and I know a lot has happened in your life and your career. The last
Yeah.
time we spoke, you were still at F&B Lesotho, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was the CEO of F&B in Lesotho. Correct.
So, please tell us what has happened ever since.
Um, Dr. Nick, I just follow, I guess, my passion and where the problems are. I've built a career on, being a problem solver and being a big dreamer. So subsequent to, being the CEO of F&B in Lesotho, I went back and I was the CEO of F&B Connect, which was at the time one best digital MVNO in the world. And we were, one of the biggest sellers of airtime and electricity and lotto services in South Africa and on the continent. Um, I then had a stint as the CEO of MTN South Africa's fintech business. And so I was, leading a fintech business in South Africa. Um, and I've just gone deeper and deeper into, I guess, the grand challenge and the fintech world. And I've now joined, Jumo as the chief of payments and partnerships, looking after, our Africa portfolio on the continent.
Right. Well, Bradwin, please tell us a little bit more about Jumo, what it is you are trying to achieve, and how are you transforming the industry?
This is such a fascinating company. I'm so blessed and privileged to have found myself here now. So, if you look at our results, just last year we did over $1 billion US of loans dispersed on the continent. We're live in more than 10 countries now. And so what we're doing is, really just leaning in where traditional banks have feared to tread.
Uh-huh.
And, we disperse to millions and millions of customers. We've done in our lifetime over $7 billion worth of loans, 220 million times over to over 35 million, citizens on the continent. And so we're just expanding and we're leveraging the best use case of AI, but for financial services and just bringing dignity to citizens in Africa and helping them enable, their livelihoods and their businesses.
And Bradwin, as a chief of partnerships, can you tell us what are the partnerships you are currently building and what type of partners are you looking for?
I think I built my career on, building perfect products in the financial services sector. So when you think about, at F&B Connect, when we won Best Digital MVNO in the world, we had to build a perfect product in order to, achieve that accolade. But where the world is shifting and, the world is gone towards a partnership model. And so gone are the days where you have to build these perfect products, but rather try to perfect partnerships. And so what we do is, we leverage, for example, partners that have real might in terms of distribution and a captured audience. So, hundreds of millions of citizens in Africa. We've really led the mobile money revolution in Africa. And so we partner with partners that have distribution might. Ours is to bring the AI and the underwriting kind of capability. But the other piece of the partnership that we also look for is on financial services. So if you look at Jumo in 2024, the bulk of the loans that we dispersed has been funded by three capital streams, by banks themselves who sit on tremendous, deposits, by institutional investors, and also through securitization mechanisms. So we also partner with banks, and our AI underwrites and also delivers, spectacular returns for banks. So when we talk partnership, we're often talking a four-way win. So a win for the distribution partner, typically a telco, a win for the banks in terms of returns or the investor, a win for the customer in the way that we price. So we have delivered spectacular savings to customers over the years that we've been in existence. and finally a win for ourselves in Jumo. So we're looking for a four-way win. Platforms and technology is easy, but partnerships are really hard because you have to find, win, 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 win in this partnership space, which is a fascinating part of my job.
So, Bradwin, if I understand it correctly, Jumo is not just facilitating payments, you're also having an economic impact, right? You're growing businesses, you're growing economies, so to speak. Can you tell us a little bit about the economic impact you're having on the growth of economies in Africa and also maybe on job creation?
So we do deep research every single year, and last year we continued the research, and what we find is most of our customers that utilize the loans that we serve are actually micro, medium, and small enterprises. So we skew towards sort of 70% of the customers that utilize these loans are small to micro, medium enterprises. And what is more importantly is that 50% of those customers say that they go on to employ at least one other person. So we know that, one of the issues in Africa is how do we grow small to micro medium enterprises, because that has material impacts on, just the GDPs of those nations. The other challenge we have is, youth unemployment in Africa. So our customers that are saying they're utilizing these services and then go on to employ at least one other person, we're solving for these grand macro issues. And this is I use my leadership voice is I've always just followed from, fast moving consumer goods research and development through to financial services. And now I find myself solving for these grand problems in Africa. So how do we leverage technology to solve for some of these grand problems, to, build economies and, create labor opportunities on the continent?
Now, Bradwin, talking about leadership, a lot has happened since we spoke last in June 2020 during COVID. How has your leadership outlook changed in the last 5 years? And please tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I still strive for like, where can I have the best impact? Where can I solve the biggest problems on the continent? And this is why I've sort of gravitated towards, leveraging technology for good. And so that has remained true to me is, I still lean on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. How do I, aspire to foster open communication and collaboration? How can I apply, integrative thinking to hold, opposing ideas that often generate tension within, the teams that I lead, but then those solutions, transcend any form of compromise. I remain committed to, driving teams that are purpose-led, and Jumo is an organization that is purpose-led, where there is cohesive, motivated, and an innovative workforce that can enhance both, internal problem-solving capabilities, but also have material impact in the geographies that we serve. And then I still, the local sort of hero over and above, the teachings of, Stephen Covey and my parents. If you look back at that first interview, they remain my first sort of idols. But Bonang Mahale, I really just love his teachings in sort of lift as you rise. So how can you lift teams with you as you ascend to the top as a leader? How can you lift economies and people and big sets of communities out of challenges? I think the last time, Dr. Nick, you and I spoke was in the middle of the pandemic, right? And coming out of that, we had nearly 2 years went dark. 1.4 billion children didn't have access to devices or internet or solutions that could, keep them connected. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is, I find that as a complete scourge. And how can we ensure that something like that never happens again? We have to ensure that everyone is connected, everyone gets the benefit of a modern connected life. And this is what we at Jumo can do, is how can we solve for these grand problems to ensure that, such things never happen again.
And Bradwin, building partnerships is obviously key to any aspiring leader today. What
Yeah.
is your advice for future leaders? How should they go about building partnerships that work?
Yeah. I'm always reminded of, I guess, my first boss, who really instilled in me that you have to prioritize people over profit. And there's no ways that a partnership could work without having a team that really supports a collaborative mindset in trying to look for those win-win-win scenarios. And that's, something that is really hard work. But I think I'm always inspired by, again, Brene Brown. So she, often when you're in a boardroom and you're, with a counterparty and you're having to, look for win-win-win, you have to sometimes make yourself quite vulnerable. And it's in those vulnerable moments where, you sort of dare greatly. And the only way then you can build trust is through a level of authenticity, which is steeped in, creating a little bit of vulnerability. And that way you sort of build trust with one another. And that's how you can move forward into the future.
Now, Bradwin, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, are there any other key skills other than building partnerships that you would want to factor in and maybe teach?
Yeah. I think that this is how I'd open it. So when you read, Daring Greatly, by Brene Brown, there's the quote that she made so famous about, the man in the arena. So I'd want to open with a quote, and I want to read it, is, the credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes off short again and again, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, or at the worst, if he fails, at least he does so while daring greatly. This quote, I often read it in, times of, peak success, or when I'm in a peak trough. Fascinatingly, our very own Nelson Mandela, gave the 1995 rugby team. I know you're a huge fan of them as well.
Yeah.
This is the quote that he gave to Francois Pena and the rugby team. And so I always like that. For me, you have to be, as a leader, a person in the arena. And you have to be daring greatly, and you have to be valiantly fighting towards, a purpose and a cause. But then I would counterbalance that with, Jim Collins goes on to describe a level 5 leader who is, personal humility, but also an unwavering commitment towards a cause. And then again, someone living right now is, I would encourage people to read, Professor Bonang Mahale's Lift as You Rise, but then he also goes on to add this beautiful African adage in his second book, which is called Behold the Turtle. Again, it describes quite in a very African manner, how you have to dare, boldly and greatly, because the way that it's described in the book is, a turtle in its shell is in its most safe space. But in order to move from point A to point B, it has to risk it all. It's got to stick its neck out in order to make progress. And I think especially in these trying times with these global uncertainties, these big macro events, we saw, coming out of the pandemic, we need brave and bold leaders who are willing to speak, truth to power, but also, stay committed to a cause, steeped in humility, but also lifting teams along as they rise.
Now, that's something you obviously have been doing for a long time, lifting future leaders. Last time we spoke about your successor at FNB Lesotho, right? The lady you mentored.
Yeah.
Now, as a mentor to many future leaders, Bradwin, is there maybe somebody you would like to highlight that you have mentored
Yeah.
over the last 5 years?
You know, there's so again, about this personal humility. I never want to name individuals and say, oh, it is because of
Oh,
me that this individual arrives. What I do though is how I try to divide my time is I spend, about a third of my time doing the business of the job. So chief payments partnerships at Jumo. The other third of my time is, the people in my team, and at Jumo, I spend an inordinate amount of time making sure that I connect with them and that I'm, fixated about, the culture that we inculcate over there. But then the other third of my time I reserve for mentoring. And the people I mentor, I skew my time towards marginalized individuals. I'm a very avid feminist. You know that I was raised by, a single mom. My grandmother was a closer domestic worker who had to do that out of circumstance. So I skew my time towards marginalized individuals. I skew my time towards Black females where I can. And at any point in time, I have a host of mentors, very much like Yolanda Kluber. So she's got the mentorship boardroom. So I try and spread my time. The one condition that I have on anyone that I mentor, though, is you have to pay it forward. So, if I'm going to invest in you and you reach a career junction a junction in your career, you have to pay it forward. And so there's some wonderful, women there whose careers are literally on the cusp of flourishing at the moment.
thank you. And last but not least, Bradwin, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who just finished school, who are looking to start a career? What are maybe one or two success principles that they should keep in mind?
Yeah. There's a couple of things. So as you rise up in your career, the first bit of your career is all about, your IQ and how smart you are, and how much you can deliver. So I've always strived for impact. The way that I got recognized very early in my career is I did the jobs that no one wanted to do. Um, the big hairy tasks that people thought were near impossible or just too gritty and too grimy to do. And so I leaned heavily into those opportunities. And people then started recognizing that that is my impact. I'm going to move towards the areas where there's issues, the things that seem like the most impossible tasks, and I'm going to give it my all. And so anyone that is starting their career, that would be my advice, is lean heavily into the tasks or the work that no one wants to do. That's how I got recognized. And then very importantly, I think in today's modern society, you have to embrace technology as a tool to embrace impact. So one of the things that I'm trying to solve for in my current role is, we have a scourge of, people that don't have connectivity to devices. So how can I leverage, Jumo's capability to solve for that? We've got less than 45% of Africans in today's world that are not connected on a smart device. So, how can we solve for that affordability barrier? Because the World Bank has shown time and time again that if you raise a nation state in their device connectivity by 10%, so a country goes from 45% smartphone connection to 55%, you can have a direct impact on that nation's GDP by up to 3%. And so if you're a modern, knowledge worker that's entering the workforce, you have to embrace technology as a tool. I use a host of, bits of technology. I was going to actually share, like, my top 5 technology tools that help me be the best productive version of myself.
Yeah,
And so, do the work that no one wants to do, but also you have to embrace technology.
of course. So, Bradwin, where can we follow your journey? Where can we follow Jumo? Where can we follow the journey of transforming Africa?
So in Jumo, you'll find us in the trenches. You'll find us, across the continent. Our names and our brands are ubiquitous. But if you want to find out more about what we're doing, I post quite avidly on LinkedIn, and so does Jumo. If you want to find out more about, how we're enabling millions and millions of Africans, the dignity of choice when it comes to their financial freedom, how we're helping leverage AI for financial inclusion, which then results in labor absorption in the economies, how we're solving for grand problems. You can find out more about that on LinkedIn. I post avidly about, how we can, use solve grand challenges, leverage, AI technology, not just to be, more creative or, better knowledge workers, but how can we use the might of that technology in, a tech for good kind of mindset and framework?
Well, Bradwin, thank you so much for making time to share your lessons, your leadership lessons, and for building so many future leaders across the continent.
Thank you, Dr. Nick. It's always a pleasure chatting to you.